Welcome to the Tackle Your Feelings podcast with me, Dr. Hannah McCormack. Tackle Your Feelings is a positive mental well-being campaign brought to you by Rugby Players Ireland in partnership with Zurich Ireland and the Z Zurich Foundation. We want you to rethink how you might approach your own positive mental well-being. With our guests, we will cover a range of topics: confidence, mindsets, life experiences that shape and mould who they are. What makes them more than a player? And joining me on the couch today is Joey Carbery. So just a little bit about Joey. I'm sure you all know him anyway, but he plays number 10 or fly half for Munster, but you can play fullback or number 15 as well for Munster and Ireland, and you previously played for Leinster. Now, obviously, before I do these, I always go to your Wikipedia page, the best source of information about people. I didn't realise that your debut for Ireland, for the senior Ireland team, was in 2016 versus the All Blacks in Soldier Field, which was a really historic win for Ireland. So I'm definitely going to circle back to that because I think that's really interesting, especially as you were born in New Zealand to Irish parents, and you moved to Athy when you were 11. But tell me about a little bit about that, your debut. Like, that was a huge game, huge occasion, and obviously a huge result. Like, what was that like?
It was pretty incredible, to be honest. Like, if I could have handpicked my debut, I probably couldn't have picked a better one. But the whole week, I remember I'd been brought into Irish camp the week before for the first time, and I suppose you're so excited anyway because that's like the pinnacle of where you want to get to, and you get into camp and it's that whole excitement and nerves, but more so just incredible to be around in this environment. And then I think I got told on the Sunday or the Monday before the game that I was going to be on the bench, and I was a bit like, this can't be true.
Yeah.
So it was, especially for me and my family, it was pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I remember ringing Dad, and he booked flights straight away, so he was over there for it, which was very cool. But yeah, I turned 21 on the Thursday then as well. So it was that whole week just, it was unreal. And I think the Chicago Cubs at the time, they just won their first game, or their first series, and I don't know how long. So Chicago itself was actually mental busy, and such a buzz around the place. Like, there was parades of like 4 or 5 million people, and yeah, it was just, the whole week was so special.
Yeah. I'd say, has it been hard to kind of emulate the same feeling again? Because that's like, again, some people make their debuts in, maybe some of the smaller games, autumn internationals, maybe at home, but being in Chicago, almost neutral ground, obviously huge occasion after. I remember at the start of it with the Irish team lining up in the figure of 8 for Anthony Foley. Like I said, people flying in from all corners of the world. Your dad from, obviously coming from Ireland, but people coming over from New Zealand, coming from Ireland, and a lot of expats in. Like, has a similar feeling happened, or is it just something that you're like, that's just really special and I'll hold it there?
I think it's something that's just so special. I know a lot of the guys who have been fortunate enough to get caps for Ireland always say the first cap is always the most special. Like, I think every time you put on a jersey, it's such an honor. But I think just how exciting and how special that first time is. It is hard to replicate. But like you said, I had cousins in LA who came to the game, their first ever rugby game. I had uncles flying from New Zealand. I had my dad there from Ireland, and he brought a few of his mates. And then the whole place was full of Irish as well. Like, I think the stadium, or the capacity, was 60,000, and I'd say at least 3/4 of them were Irish. So it was pretty special.
Yeah, amazing. And a lot of, you were, like you said, you just turned 21. There were a lot of other people who kind of started, either it was, again, first cap or first handful of caps for that game. Was it nice to have that kind of younger crew around you, or like, again, just like, how did you prepare for that? Or is it something that there was naivety around it because you were so young?
I think there was a good bit of naivety. Like, I remember I wasn't even that nervous on the bench, where I always find, even today, being on the bench a lot harder than starting, because you don't know when you're going to come on. You could be coming on in the second minute or the last minute. and you might need to come on and make a difference. Where in that game, it was, I just think I was just so excited, and that kind of blocked out everything else. And then as well, I had Gary was on the bench, Gary Ringrose, with me for the first time as well. So having him there throughout the week, and there was a few other guys, Luke McGrath was there, and guys who I was really friendly with who were in that situation for the first time as well. So it did make it a lot easier having them around, and we could figure it out almost between ourselves rather than by yourself. So it was, yeah, it kind of just worked out really well that week. Especially having guys around you.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but I always like to ask people what it is or what it was that kind of got them into the sport of rugby. And you lived in New Zealand. I know your dad moved over to New Zealand when he was really young, wasn't he?
He was like 6 or 7 months when he moved over.
Okay, so like proper young. New Zealand, like rugby's almost kind of, I wouldn't say a religion. It's part of their culture. So was it just something that you were like, you knew you were going to play, or was it something that was especially encouraged, or how did Joey Carbery get into rugby?
It was, I think it wasn't as if even I was encouraged to play. It was just, like you said, it was what happened and what you did. I knew I had a big love for the game very, very early on. Like I used to, instead of sleeping with the teddy, I used to sleep with the rugby ball. And when I was like 2, my granddad gave me a mouse guard and stuff when I was like 1. So like he played rugby. My dad was big involved in rugby. I would have gone and watched dad play. So it was kind of, you just grew up with it around you, and all my friends, that's all we did. You play during lunchtime at school, and then we'd always have a game either at 8 or 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and then stay around and watch the other age groups play. And then the seniors were playing late afternoon, so you'd almost be at the rugby club all day. So yeah, it was just, you kind of get brought up around it and you played it, and it was never forced on me. It was never anything like that. It was more so just for the love of the game, and it was all I wanted ever to do. So I'm pretty lucky to be able to do it.
And you came back to Ireland when you were 11. Was there, and you moved to Athy in Kildare, which, you can correct me if I'm wrong, isn't necessarily, like Kildare isn't necessarily, well, I suppose it's somewhat more of a rugby county, but obviously GAA has a big influence. Soccer has a big participation level over here. You played other sports growing up as well. Like, was there a noticeable shift, or was it again just you came home to Ireland and you were like, where's the rugby club, or need to get involved immediately, or what kind of happened there?
I suppose because I love the game so much, that's what I wanted to get into straight away. And I've always found rugby a great way to meet people and become friends with people. And some of my closest friends are, to this day, are the people I met in Athy when I was under 12s for that first team. So they would be my best friends even to this day. And I think that was a big thing for me to settle in, was getting to know people and getting to know people in school, but mostly rugby teammates. But like you said, rugby was big in Athy, and it has been for years. It's quite an old club. But then there was Gaelic and there's soccer, and there's all the different other sports. Where in New Zealand it was rugby in the winter and maybe cricket or surfing or something in the summer. So it was just one or the other, where over here there was a lot more variety, which I actually really enjoyed, because I played soccer a good bit up until about under 14s or 15s, and played Gaelic in the summers then as well. So I just love being active and being out and playing sports. So it was actually really, really cool to be able to play something other than just rugby.
And so when you're 11, you have a lot of friendships established. You're kind of like, it's quite a formative time of your life. Was it hard to move back to Ireland? Was it, was there any kind of, obviously sport was really helpful because it gives you a kind of catchment friendship group. You already have met people who are potentially interested in the same things that you're interested in, same age group, but you still have like different experiences over the last couple of years. And when you're 11, you're potentially trying to find out who you are, what you're doing, you get into that kind of, you're on the cusp of being a teenager where you actually figure out a little bit more about yourself. Was that tough to kind of leave friends in New Zealand to come over, or like, do you think sport was just so beneficial from that point of view, or was there any struggles like coming
the
across?
big thing I found was probably, it was quite tough after 2 or 3 months. I was probably too immature and too young to fully recognize what was happening. Like I said goodbye to my friends in New Zealand, and I had a really good group of friends there. But I didn't think it was going to be like I'd come to Ireland a few times when I was younger for family events on my mum's side. All my dad's side lived over there, so my aunties and stuff and cousins. So I always was lucky to have on both sides and friends back there. But then when we got told we were moving, I didn't really know the severity of it, how big of a move it was. Like you're going to the other side of the world. It's not like you can pop back for a weekend. So leaving your friends and leaving my dad's side probably didn't hit hard till 2 or 3 months later. When I was in Ireland, and I was lucky I had my mum's family here as well. So like wherever I go, I had family. But it was 2 or 3 months after arriving in Ireland is when I started to realize, geez, I really miss them. But I was so fortunate that I did have family here, and I had begun to grow a base of friends here through rugby and through where I was living. Like there was people next door that would always go out and play soccer or whatever, and that was an easy way to meet people. And then through school as well, I was friendly enough with people there, so it did help with the sadness of leaving everyone. But I think it was really sad to leave, but it didn't hit me for 2 or 3 months because I was just too young.
Yeah. And were there any kind of, I suppose, cultural differences, like accents, or did people kind of find it hard to, I know you obviously had been here before, your mum moved over, you had a lot of connection to Ireland, so I'm sure there was a lot of familiarity that you had with how Irish people kind of like acted and, carried themselves. But was there any kind of adjustment that you had to kind of almost adapt to? And you're so young that it probably happened quite quickly. But again, 11, you're kind of like, oh, how do I do this? Or was there anything like that?
I definitely found in New Zealand, we'd always get the bus into school, but we would always wear Roman sandals. We wouldn't actually wear shoes and socks. And then the second you got into the gates, you'd just take them off, and then you leave them in your place, and then you put them on, then get them back onto the bus. So you in your bare feet all day. So in having to wear socks and shoes, and that was a bit of a difference. I know it sounds weird, but I'd never, well, like you would have worn it, but never to school. You always wore the sandals. But then other than that, it was probably just learning Irish in school. That took me a while. I didn't know anything, so I had to do a little bit, and then didn't have to do exams in it, but it was just sitting in the class trying to understand it. I was a bit lost. And then the accent took a while to understand certain people. But other than that, I started in quite easily. I had no issues, no troubles or anything like that. So I was pretty lucky that way.
Yeah. And do you find, this is actually just pure curiosity on my behalf, when you go back to New Zealand, because I assume you go back to visit family and obviously friends there, do you find that your New Zealand accent comes back, or do you kind of keep the accent that you have, which is quite neutral anyway?
Yeah, I think it would get a bit stronger, I suppose, if I stayed for a few weeks, but it's also my dad has quite a strong New Zealand accent, so listening to him kind of keeps your ear in. But I suppose when I go back it would a little bit, but not a huge amount. I do find I can hear in certain ways, certain things I say. Yeah. A bit of both.
Does it ever creep back in when you're here?
I think so. It's hard to know because people are like, oh, did you put that on? I was like, no, because people say if I'm speaking up in a meeting and training, that they say, oh, you sounded a lot more New Zealand there, but maybe when I'm a bit more serious.
Okay.
But I don't know. It's hard. It's my brain's.
Yeah, you don't. It's not done
nothing's
purposely.
intentional. It's just sometimes you say something a bit more if you're cross or you're a little bit more agitated. It might sound a bit more New Zealand, but I think it's.
You find that I have a friend who's from Cork, and quite a neutral accent, but when he talks about, when he's giving out about his mum, he'll put on a real Cork accent. Or my dad was Irish, but my mum is from the Philippines. And when I was in college, people used to know who I was talking to if my phone rang. And I'm like, oh, it's just someone from home. Yeah. And I'd pick it up and they're like, we knew who you were talking to depending what accent you had. And
it's funny how it works, isn't it?
I was like, I don't change my voice, but obviously I do. Yeah.
You don't mean to. I'd say listening to it, and whoever's speaking to you kind of just replicate it back.
And does it ever happen? Because obviously there's a lot of kind of Kiwi guys and Southern Hemisphere people come over to play in the provinces, and obviously now, or even on the Irish team, the national team, do you even find your accent changes or does anyone comment on that when you're talking to guys from New Zealand on the teams you're playing, or again, is it?
No one's commented on it, but I think it's the same. You kind of hear them speaking, and
Yeah.
it kind of sounds familiar, I suppose, and you do sound a little bit more like them. And there's a few of them in the Irish camp even now.
Yeah.
So.
Have you ever had to act as translator for people?
No, I haven't, thankfully, but a few times, yeah. There's some guys, even Irish guys, you need to translate
Yeah.
for. So.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd say some of the accents, because obviously Ireland, for such a small country, has so many different accents.
Yeah.
And bringing people from different parts, from Ulster to Cork to,
It's hilarious. Even in Munster, obviously the Cork accent is so strong, especially like the West Cork. And like I remember Steve Larkham had such a hard time trying to understand some people, and if he does asking someone who has a more plateau accent, being like, "Can you just repeat what he said?" So that was funny.
Yeah, I had a friend in college who's from Donegal, and she hung out in the group, and again, I don't know, maybe it's just from listening to different accents and stuff, but one of the girls from Dublin used to be like, "What did she say?" And I'd be like, "Well, she's just said this. It was very clear." So yeah, it is kind of funny, but I'll get back into the questions a little bit more. So one of the questions I have is I want to figure out what is the biggest life lesson that you've learned, because again, you're 27, 28 now?
27.
27. You've had quite a lot of experience, obviously, through sport, but big decisions, even moving from the other side of the world at a young age, I think it can really influence how you approach life, and, because you haven't been, a lot of people kind of can grow up in one, or literally be born, grow up, live in one area their whole time. They might travel a little bit, but it's very different to, moving across the world. And then you obviously made a huge decision back in 2018 to go from Leinster down to Munster, where you've been since. But is there anything that you can kind of say, was a huge life lesson that really kind of put you into the position you are today, or kind of really influenced how you think or approach things at the moment?
I think a big thing, and it sounds pretty cliche, but it was just to almost trust yourself and back yourself. A lot of my move from Leinster to Munster was based on what I could control. I knew that if I had the right opportunity, that I could do what I could do. So I wanted to put the ball in my own court rather than waiting to be picked or waiting for something to happen in order to play. So that was a big thing for me, was trusting myself to know that I could do it given the opportunity. And just being myself is a big thing, like slotting into different groups, whether it's going into Irish camp or the Leinster camp initially, and then going into the Munster camp from Leinster. It was just, I didn't want to be anyone else other than me, and I suppose I think people like that as well. You don't want to be coming down and trying to be something you're not, or trying to be bigger than who you are. So I just wanted to kind of be as honest to myself as I possibly could be. I suppose that was probably my biggest thing, slotting into different groups.
And where did you think that came from? Because that's something that I think a lot of people do struggle with, is that, and I've seen kind of almost kind of memes or skits done on it in social media, that people are like, "Oh, you're such a nice person." It's like, "Oh, thanks, I've curated this personality just for you."
Yeah.
So it can be very difficult sometimes to stay true to yourself, especially if you are moving from groups to groups. And we know that people transitioning from primary school to secondary school to maybe a different secondary school, which I know you did, even secondary school to college, and it's like figuring out who you are and trying to maybe, like I said, be true to yourself, because that is the best version that you can be. But a lot of people struggle with that. So where did you pick that up, do you think? Or can you kind of...
It was definitely, I think I've had, like you said, I changed schools, going into college, being in all these different groups of people, all the different teams I've been involved, that it does take a bit of practice. And sometimes, rather than being yourself, I would have gone maybe a little bit quiet rather than saying something that was on my mind or saying my opinion. And that's taken years of just realizing that, look, something didn't work, but I knew that something else could have worked. So the next time that opportunity or that problem came up, that I would voice my opinion, even if it was the wrong one. And for sure, wrong a lot of times. But it's just more so having the confidence, and if you're wrong, then you do at least learn from it. If it's wrong, and I think that's the beauty of being in a rugby team, is even if you are wrong, it's never anyone trying to take your trying to take your head off, but there's never anyone criticizing you. It's always to get better and to be in the better, for the betterment of the team. So that's a big thing for me, is that even if I am wrong, at least I can express it, and if I do get it wrong, then I do learn from it. But it's just knowing that the best version of myself, like you said, was always when I was just being myself. And if people didn't like that, then at least you knew that that was not someone who's going to be close to you for a while, and you grow friendships from that, from similar likes and beliefs and stuff like that. So I do think it's definitely worked for me a lot that way.
Yeah. And I think you said a key word there, which is practicing it.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the time people assume that people who have confidence or people who are very good at being true to themselves are just automatically like that. Whereas some people can be. There are, I would say individuals who have the ability to do that. But a lot of the time it does take a little bit of, whether it's speaking up or saying, I don't agree with that, or I would prefer if we did it that way. And then knowing that the right people around you won't mind if you make a mistake, or if you kind of mess it up, or if they'll feel comfortable enough saying, no, we're not going to do it that way, and this is why, as opposed to just kind of blanket, like, no.
Yeah.
Or blanket kind of freeze you out, or for whatever reason. So.
Exactly. I don't think anyone ever goes out there to want you to be wrong, or to kind of show, look, oh, he's wrong here.
Yeah.
Let's not listen to him. It's never like that. So I'm lucky and fortunate to be in environments that it's willing people to make mistakes, and we almost want to make mistakes sometimes, because we do learn a lot more from our mistakes than we do. So as well, it came from the position I play in rugby as well. You're kind of the guy who's barking orders, and you're trying to get people to do certain things, and trying to get people to do things around you to help the team, and to make the team look better, I suppose. But that was never something that was natural to me, and yelling at people and saying it, like screaming at people and giving out to them, was never that natural to me. So, and I never reacted well to it myself. So I always wanted to go about my own business in a certain way. So I've learned, and like you said, practiced different ways of getting through to people. So that's taken time.
And that's really interesting, because again, there is sometimes the perception that, the number 10 will be the angry guy, or the guy who can, or girl for that matter, can, be quite dictatorial. But I suppose, is it just, again, is that's just your personality? Like you said, it's never been who you are. So it just goes to show there's lots of different ways to do it. And sometimes the less stereotypical way can be the best.
I agree with that. I don't like you said, some people it works for, who just like to be screamed at and told exactly what to do. But I find that it's the best way to be adaptable on the pitch and to be the best is just to be, I suppose, you have to be commanding as a 10, but you also have to let people do their thing. They're all picked and they're all professional rugby players for certain things, so they have to be able to be confident in their skills. Everyone's good at certain things, so I've been allowing them to bring that out of them, without inhibiting them or bringing down their confidence, I think is a big thing as a 10.
Yeah. And has there ever been a situation where, like, through your practice of voicing your opinion or being, trying to be that leader, that you really regretted a decision that you made, or regretted something you said, whether inside or outside of rugby? Because a lot of the stuff that you kind of would have learned through sport, even how you speak about being a number 10 there, is actually really transferable to how you can just interact with anyone. And it's not from a trying to influence friends and family to follow your lead. It's more like, you know, like I said, everyone has their strengths. Different people are going to react differently to different approaches. Some people need to be told, no, you did something wrong. Some people need to be kind of maybe handled a little bit more carefully, and that that transfers all the way through life. So is there ever anything that you, or has there ever been a time where you've like, I've regretted saying that, or I've even regretted not saying that?
Definitely regretted not saying it. Like, I think over the last few years, I've definitely come out of myself a lot, and knowing that I've sometimes maybe not said something because I didn't want to offend someone. But now, knowing what I know now, I don't think, if you can say something in a critical way, but all I'm trying to do is help someone. So I maybe haven't said something because I thought I'd insult them, but at the end of the day, I suppose I'm trying to help them get better, and that makes the team get better. So probably regretting not knowing this earlier. I know
Yeah.
it's easier to say, but it took me a while to come around to it. But that would be probably the main regret maybe. But other than that, I don't have a huge amount of regrets. Because obviously, rugby's quite emotional, and in the heat of the battle, you can get quite stressed, and I suppose that comes back to being able to calm yourself and almost just be mindful, be present that, look, we have to go to the next stage here. So sometimes I've let something that might have happened in the first 5 minutes of a game influence my decision in the 30th minute of the game because I'm still not over it. So learning how to deal with something that's happened previous and being able to let go. It's a big thing as a kicker. I find that there's obviously, you've got to be a rugby player, but then you've also got kicking where you can miss a kick you know you should have got, but the next play you have to be able to organise the players around you and then get back into the shape. So it's being able to deal with that, I suppose, is a big thing as well.
Yeah, I suppose that's a really good, if we could all transfer that skill of not dwelling on the like mistakes that we make, because again, I think we've all been there, we've done something, and you know, hours later we're like, oh my god, I can't believe I did that. Or, you know, whether it's talking to someone, or something you said to someone, or an interview you've been in, or even like something as like doing an exam, and you're like, I can't believe I wrote that down when I knew. But it's like, there's, from you've just explained there's no point dwelling on it, because it's going to it could negatively impact the next play or the next 5 minutes or something like that. So that's actually kind of a really good lesson to try and transfer. But I definitely agree as well that like, you're 27 now, which for a lot of people is still very young. So it can be a process, and it can be just practicing and being a little bit more compassionate towards yourself, that you're like, I've made a mistake, but I know that the next time I won't do it again, or I know who I can talk to about it, or things like that.
But massively, sometimes, especially when I was younger, I might have done 8 good things and 2 bad things in a game, and I'd dwell on the 2 bad things a lot more than I'd think about the good things, and then that would then almost deteriorate me from doing the good things the next week because I was afraid of doing the 2 bad things. So that's something I've learned to deal with, and it's similar, but it just takes time.
Yeah, and absolutely, I think, again, huge lesson that anyone can take into life, into sport. Doesn't matter what sport you're playing, doesn't matter what kind of life you're leading. We have a really, like, I think I remember reading about it before, and it was like, we tend to dwell on negative because biologically speaking, we had to, like when we were, you know, cavemen, let's say, and I'm being very basic about this information here, but it was like, you obviously had to be aware of danger, because danger could literally mean that your family, your tribe, whatever, it was going to be wiped out.
Yeah.
So we're a lot quicker to focus on negative things, negative information. We're even a lot quicker to share negative information, which is why sometimes when you go online, there's a lot of like negative reviews about things, but and people almost don't trust the positive reviews because they're like, but if they said that this was bad, then I have to focus on this one. It's like the red berries or whatever. And it takes something like, there was a ratio that was given before, And again, very much pop psychology. Some of it, it's potentially being debunked that you need like either 3 or 5 positive instances to outweigh a negative instance.
Okay.
So when we experience something, we're very good at ruminating and focusing on the negative, but it takes practice, and it takes almost like it's a skill to go, well, if I've done one negative thing, what are 3 good things that I've done? Or what are the, if you did 8 good things and 2 bad things, it's like, well, how do I focus on the 8 good things? Not necessarily to ignore the bad things that have happened or the negative experiences, because we do need to learn from them. But it's more like, how can I make sure that I don't forget about the good stuff as well? Which I think is me kind of very much, not even paraphrasing, because I've extended everything that you said there. But it just goes to show that you've got like a really good approach to kind of stuff that I'm like, yeah, do what Joey does.
I try anyway.
Yeah. So I want to go back to something you've kind of mentioned a couple of times, and that's the friends that you have both inside and outside of rugby. So knowing that you've mentioned it a couple of times already, you had a really good friendship base in New Zealand before you moved over here. Some people are very lucky to have the same friends all the way through primary school. Again, I'm sure it happens in New Zealand as well, but and anywhere that people are living, but you go to the same primary school, you can go to the same secondary school, you can even maybe go into the same college, live in a similar area, and you keep that friendship group the whole way through. But when you're forced to kind of leave those friends literally on the other side of the world and establish a new group of friends, did you have a strong, and you've also said that you kind of found that friendship group through sport then and through school when you came over to the Thai, but is there anyone who you've kind of potentially stayed in contact with from New Zealand, whether it's friends or family, who you feel has supported you throughout, or even from when you first came to Ireland, who are still now part of like your go-to, I need to chat to that guy kind of thing?
Yeah, not as much from my New Zealand friends, but like from when I came over to Ireland, we had a good group of guys in the rugby club team who we would have gone to school with and grown up all the way through, like you said, to about 18 to under 18s, 19s, where we kind of dispersed into college in different places, but have always stayed very tight. I'm lucky to have 5 or 6 guys who, like, even for I'm getting married in June, and they're all booked their Airbnb for the week before, so we're gonna go out early and hang out and stuff like that. But like one of them's my groomsman, and like one of the guys I trust with my life. And to be honest, all of them are all as close with me as they would be with my parents. So like they've always just been around, and like they'd catch up with dad or whatever, or mum, or whenever they see them out wherever for dinner or something like that, if they ran into each other. So I'm blessed to have that close of, it's almost like an extended family, that group of friends I have. We've kind of been through everything together, through the ringer, through good and bad times in school and college, and they're all obviously maybe doing different things to what I'm doing now, but at the end of the day, I know like we're all still, even if we might not see each other 3 or 4 months because some of them have gone traveling and moved away for a while, and it's always the same when we come back. So that's really nice to have. That would probably be my longest group of friends, and to this day still my closest friends.
Yeah. And do you have, like, a lot of people assume that that's just something that happens, but do you find like effort has to be put in, because you are like a professional athlete, so your workday is very different to someone else's workday. A lot of people, and maybe you have friends who play rugby in a recreational way, or have other sports that they play recreationally, that they use sport to escape from work, whereas sport is your work. And it's very physically demanding, very mentally demanding. So in your downtime, they're like, oh, let's go have a kick around, and you're like, no. or let's watch sport, or is there ever any, like, how do you deal with that kind of, like, if you're the only, let's say, out of that group, if you're the one the one who has gone into being a pro athlete, how do you manage those friendships then?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. And like you said, a lot of them would play the rugby or Gaelic in their spare time, and then work throughout the day. So especially for me, I find like I've a very little free time, and when I do have free time, it's precious, and it's spent time with Robin and when she can, and even see my own folks. Like I might not see my parents for a couple of weeks on end, even though I'm living 15 minutes away. So it's the same boat with them. But I'm lucky enough that it can be. We don't have to catch up every week, and whenever we do meet up, it goes back to the same. But it is something that I definitely could get better at. Is finding the time to go and meet them for, even if it was just a coffee or something like that. But it is very tough with conflicting schedules. To be lucky, we're lucky enough, none of them suggest going for a kick around, so I haven't had to say no to that. But
Yeah.
it might be going for a coffee or dinner or lunch or something like that. But it is tough because we're all on such different schedules, and but yeah, lucky enough that when we do meet up, that or even if it was a phone call, I know that all
Yeah.
pick their phone up straight away.
And is it something that you like literally as a group try and schedule in? Is there someone who kind of takes command of that and is like, right, guys, it's, Joey's wedding, so this is what we have to do, or it's Christmas, this is what we have to do, or when are we going to get together for, that dinner or that coffee
Yeah.
as a group, or like.
They're all pretty good at it, to be fair. But yeah, we always try and get a Christmas dinner, and that's a big thing. Summertime we'll always have a few things on because we're probably a little bit more flexible. But yeah, we have a WhatsApp group, so if someone has an idea, someone just chucks it in, and people either agree or disagree, or
Yeah.
So we work it out.
Yeah. So it does take effort, and I think again,
massively.
People interpret that friendships should be like, or even all relationships are almost like if they're in any way effortful, then it's not worth it. And there's definitely a line where I think if you find it effortful to spend time with that person, as in when you're hanging out with them, you're like, this is a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Whereas it's good to put the effort in to get to that point of hanging out with someone, and then
Yeah.
when it's effortless to be in their company, then it's a good.
I think it needs to be worthwhile, the effort.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is definitely with my close group of friends that even if all you want to do is sit on the couch after a long day and you go and meet them, you always feel way better for doing it. And it's the same with all relationships. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. And tell me, I'm going to rewind way back to the start when you were talking about your debut, and you said that you had, as a young player, you had like Gary Ringrose on the bench beside you doing exactly the same thing, making his debut at the same time. There was other people kind of on a similar timeline. What was it like having that kind of support for those big moments? And is that kind of, I know obviously Gary, now you're not playing on the same provincial team, but you'd meet up at national camp or other kind of occasions like that. But what's the support like in the sporting environment? And even how do you navigate, and I always find this interesting. I'm pretty sure I've asked nearly everyone this, but turning up on a weekend and like battling against them. And then a couple of weeks later, it's like, oh, you're in camp now and you have to be, really close knit and good mates and stuff. Like, how does that dynamic work, or how do you navigate those kind of challenges? Or is it challenging?
I wouldn't find it challenging at all. I think the environment that is created up in Irish camp is purely there for everyone to make the team better and to make yourself better. And there's a big emphasis on being yourself and asking questions, and even if you're wrong, putting your thoughts and ideas out, because on the actual rugby pitch, sometimes a lot of the time you wouldn't have time to say what you're thinking or what you might see. So it's actually getting to know what someone else is thinking, and then you get more of an understanding of, oh, he might step this way, he might run and pass this way, or he might kick in this situation. So it's been able to almost get to know them before, and knowing their traits and skills and what they're good at, and I think that helps then a lot on the pitch. And then I feel also that when you know someone like that, you're more willing to chat to them about, it could be anything. It could be how many brothers and sisters they have, or it might be, what's your thoughts on this play or something like that. it just opens the door a little bit more, I think, to being open and letting people kind of understand and see who you really are. And I think then that obviously happens in Munster and it happens in Ireland. And then, like you said, we go out and kill each other for 80 minutes one week and then we're on the same team. But I think everyone sees past that. And I think when you have a Munster jersey on, all you want us to do is do well for Munster. When you have an Irish jersey on, all you want to do is well for Ireland. So it's not a challenge at all. I don't think. Thankfully, I don't think anyone's
yeah.
like that, because it'd make it a lot tougher.
Yeah. And so, what was it like having like the Gary and Luke? Was it Luke McGarry
Yeah.
as well? They're kind of experiencing the same. Was that comforting? Was it, was it, or was there even kind of any like friendly rivalry of kind of, I can do it, and if you're going to do it, I want to do better, or anything like
It was
that?
definitely comforting. I felt like, looking back on it, it was a lot more daunting than I thought, but I think I didn't feel as daunted or didn't feel much pressure because of the guys I had around me. And I remember even that week, just even if we were a bit unsure of a play, we'd sit down in our own time, free time, where we didn't have anything on, and we'd be like, look, let's talk about this or let's talk about that. And especially for a 10, that was hugely good for me, because I knew Gary, who would play outside me, he could give me his view, and then Lukey, who was playing inside me, could give me his view as well. So it was massively helpful for me to have them. But even, it might not even been plays, it might have been like, Jesus, this is how did you find that training? It was so intense. But like the Irish camps and training is always a lot more intense. So being able to chat to them, and it was really reassuring to have them around me.
Yeah. And I suppose on the conversely, then, having people who you might even look up to on the team, what is that like, having, obviously one of the biggest number 10s in the world, Johnny Sexton, has been a stalwart of Irish rugby for so long, like, or other number 10s, or other even fullbacks, because sometimes you do go back to the playing 15. Did you have any role models growing up, or even now, who do you kind of look to kind of, I suppose, inspire you, or to challenge yourself of, like, you want to get to a level, even though being the best version of you is really important, do you still look to role models to see, I want to be like that guy? Or even growing up, was there anyone?
When I was growing up, obviously growing up in New Zealand, it would have been Mills Moline and Daniel Carter would have been my two, and it's funny, 10 and 15, so I got learned a bit about from them. But like, I think being around players who are a lot more experienced than me and being there and done a lot more than me is massive, because even from a training session, you might be playing against them in training, you can watch back training and be like, look, he did this really well, I want to try bring this into my game, or he did this really well, I want to try that, bring that. But then at the end of the day, like you said, we are different players as well, and we both have different strengths and different weaknesses, and he's better than me at certain stuff, I might be better than him at other stuff. So being able to look at certain things that he does, and it could be anyone, it could be, I find watching rugby, sometimes initially I was like, it felt like work. If you get me, like if on a Saturday evening, if I sat down, I'd be like, I don't want to watch rugby, I want to watch something that would take my mind off. But I just enjoy watching the game, but it's also a good way of picking up different traits from certain players. So I suppose watching as much rugby as possible, and trying to pick up little things, and looking at other 10s, what they do well and what they might not do, I can always be like, look, if that was me in that situation, this is what I would want to do, or how can I bring that into my game, or how could I do that but better? So it's kind of, I wouldn't have a huge amount of idols right now. It's more so just focusing on what I can add and improve to my game.
Yeah. And how about, like, your dad? Obviously, you said he played rugby, so you would have watched him a lot. Does he ever give you kind of? Do you ever go to him for tips, or does he kind of go, "Now, my son plays for Ireland. I think he's all right."
No, I would. To be honest, above them two, Dad would have always been my number one.
Yeah.
He coached me all the way through to under 18s from my first rugby team at under 5s or 6s. So I've always gone to him, and he was always really tough on me in training, more so than other guys, and we used to clash a bit over that. But I knew that he was just trying to make me better.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think sometimes you don't want to hear it, but he will tell it straight sometimes, like, oh, you didn't do this that well, or you did that really well. But I suppose at the end of the day, all he's trying to do is help me get better.
Yeah.
So yeah, he would have been number one,
Yeah.
like, idol the whole way through.
And did you ever feel any pressure? Like, I know, again, New Zealand rugby is like runs through the veins of the people over there. Like, there's been a reverence paid towards the All Blacks, the Southern Hemisphere style rugby. Was there ever any pressure on you coming to Ireland, even like when you were younger, to do something that was different, or even like on your dad if he was coaching? From obviously, I'm going to assume he coached you in New Zealand and then he coached you in Ireland. Like, were
Yeah,
people like, oh, Mr. Carbery's going to be the best coach ever because he's from New Zealand? Or,
yeah.
you know, did you ever feel any pressure?
I personally didn't feel any. I don't know whether there was or not, but I didn't feel anything, thankfully. To be honest, all I wanted to do was, I just enjoyed it so much that maybe
Yeah.
I just looked past it, or I didn't have it, or thankfully I didn't, because I think if I did feel that, that would have been a lot harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think sometimes when we have those expectations put on us, it can be like some people do find it hard to rise to the challenge. Some people love having those expectations. And I think, you know, there's no you're a better person for one or the other. It's just different approaches or whatever. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to see. But I suppose last big question, as I call them, did you always want to be a rugby player? Was there ever anything else that you wanted to be when you were little growing up? And as a young person of 27 now, is there anything you want to be when you grow up, like post rugby? I know it's not something that, you know, and through Rugby Players Ireland, it's something that we try to encourage people to prepare for. But is there anything that you've kind of got your eye on, or anything that's ever been outside of rugby that you've kind of been like, yeah, that would be cool?
I think growing up, no. I think I've always wanted to just be a rugby player. So I'm pretty lucky to be able to do what I do. It's always something that I've just pushed towards and been quite just very driven towards. I suppose now being a bit more mature and seeing like how quickly a career could end. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do after, but currently studying an MBA, so I can be somewhat prepared for whatever happens after rugby. So that would be a big thing. Hopefully the MBA is quite broad. It can give me different options, whether I wanted to go into the corporate world or if I'm become an entrepreneur. Or I'd like to be my own boss. I think that would be pretty cool, and be able to choose your hours. Obviously, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of risk, but hopefully, the beauty of rugby is you can build up so many connections. The networks you create is insane. So the amount I can learn from people outside of rugby, and hopefully transfer some of my skills from rugby into whatever I do, that pays off.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I have no magical plan.
And would you ever get into coaching like your dad?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I say that now, but maybe when I have kids of my own, I might want to get involved at that level. I feel like when I'm finished with professional rugby, that I'll definitely want to try something new, because it has been a big part of my life up until whatever age I finish at. So, look, I'm not saying no to it, but at the moment I can't see myself doing it.
I was gonna say, someone who used to sleep with a rugby ball at 2 years old,
Yeah.
it's no harm trying to, you know,
try something different.
Actually, that's a good question that I'll just ask, which isn't necessarily on here, but like, what do you do to take a step away from rugby? Because you kind of said that before, that, you know, watching rugby at the weekend, like, it can feel like work.
Yeah.
Something that, say, you know, again, you've got a group of friends, they're like, oh, this game is on, do you want to come around and watch it? And you're like, no, just done that for the whole week. Like, what kind of things, like, do you have, what are your other hobbies, let's say?
I suppose with the limited amount of time we have off, and then not being too strenuous on the body either. A big thing for me is just getting home and actually just not opening a laptop at to watch training or not looking through plays. It might be watching TV with Robin or going for a walk, or like even today we went for breakfast with Robin and our dog Harry, and it was just nice just to sit in a normal cafe just to do nothing. Other than that, hobbies, I'd try and play a bit of golf when the weather's okay. And then yeah, it's just walking, going to the cinema, going out for food, just stuff that I know that when I go out it won't be talking about rugby. And I've kind of alluded a lot of times to Robin that she's very interested, but sometimes I'm like, let's talk about something else. But I'm lucky enough that there is a lot of things to do, and I'm actually living in Kildare now, so I drive up and down to Limerick. That when I get home, it feels like I've escaped, if you get me. So that drive in the car, I can kind of unwind from the day. I get out of the car and I'm fresh. So it's I have a good dynamic at the moment.
You've left it behind.
Exactly.
You're not kind
I'm not dwelling on anything.
Yeah, it's not like you've got a house or apartment, in the shadows of Thomond Park.
Exactly.
That you look out your window and you're like, there's work.
Yeah, exactly. So it's nice to have a change.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thanks, Joey. I think that's been a really interesting conversation. I think if anyone picks up anything from this episode, it's the attitude and mindset that you have towards things. And I think a lot of people in the rugby circles don't realise that they have so much that they can encourage other people to do just by, whether it's like, speaking up, not staying true to yourself and not kind of like trying to shrink to fit into an environment, and just the attitude that you have to a lot of things. So I want to say thanks very much for joining. But before I let you go properly, I'm going to do our little quick fire round questions. So I'm just going to ask you this, and this is kind of one of those things like one word answers or short answers, whatever you feel. So first one is, would you rather stay in or go out?
Stay in.
Would you read a book or watch a movie?
Watch a movie.
Any good movies you watched lately?
What did I watch recently? I watched the Banshees of Inisherin. That was very good. I think I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
That's very good. That was the latest one I've seen in the movie in the cinema, and then I watched the Elvis movie as well, which is very good.
Would you rather talk about it or think about it?
Talk about it.
Time alone or time with friends?
Time with friends.
Podcast or playlist on your big drives home from Limerick to Kildare? What's on the radio?
Definitely a bit of both, but probably majority playlist.
Okay. Who's your favourite music, or what's your favourite music to listen to at the moment?
To be honest, it's really, really random. It could be like something I Shazammed, and then it could be something that someone played in the gym, and I play it all. And I always just listen to my songs. It's never a certain playlist. It could be anything. Okay.
Do you like cooking for yourself or ordering a takeaway?
Cooking.
Favorite childhood TV show?
The Simpsons.
Nickname you've been called and why?
Andrew Conway always calls me Carbs because it's short for Carbery, so that's probably the furthest and most intelligent one. Because
in New Zealand they have I was going to say in Australia, it's definitely you add O to a name, everything, and that's it. But did you ever have anything? Were you a bit like nicknames at that age when you were younger?
Not really. I suppose. Obviously, my full name is Joseph, and from a very young age, there was two of us. One of my other mates was called Joseph as well, and I was always Joey, and he was Joseph. So just from that, but my dad's Joe as well.
Okay.
And his dad is Joe as well. So it's Joe, Joey, Joseph. So it's
okay.
That's how
so you're
goes.
Always just Joe, Joey, and Joseph, as opposed to someone being like Joey, and the three of you are like, yeah.
I feel like there's a bit of it. There had to be some sort of difference.
Yeah. What's your favorite food?
Asian cuisine or Italian cuisine?
Okay. Yeah, good choices. What was your favorite subject in school?
Biology or maths.
And then finally, do you have any hidden talents?
Probably in New York, being able to navigate the subway system. That's a big thing. I'm quite good at that, surprisingly. So it's quite tricky at the start, but I've got quite good at it.
Okay, you could probably sell that as that could be your business idea.
That could be something, how to navigate the subway system.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, that's it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for coming and having a chat with us today. So really enjoyed it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Tackle Your Feelings podcast. To find out more info about the topics discussed and for tips on your own positive mental well-being, as well as information about and how to sign up to the Tackle Your Feelings Schools programme, please visit tackleyourfeelings.com.